What is something that's considered as quote unquote normal, but is actually unhealthy, toxic, unfair, or unethical? Shopping for the lowest prices. Yes, we all should try to be wise with our spending, especially those of us who aren't Mr. or Mrs. Moneybags. And no, expensive stuff isn't inherently more ethical, environmental, nutritional, or anything else you're thinking of. Just put the pitchforks down and hear me out. Products and services with rock bottom pricing achieve those low prices by cutting corners. Sweatshops, strip mining, deforestation, unhealthy ingredients, anti competitive business practices, not paying full time employees a salary they can live on in the area they work. These are the things that enable your ultra low price products. It's costly to be cheap, applies to much more than your own wallet. Again, expensive products and services do a lot of these things too because greed is greed. But if you go and look for the ethical versions of products and services you use, you will find that they cost a bit more than their unethical equivalents. Cage free eggs cost a little more than regular eggs. Clothing made by workers who are paid fair wages costs more than clothes made in sweatshops. You get the idea. The sad thing is that there is usually an ethical version in the same price range as whatever you're already purchasing, so they don't actually cost that much more. If the ethical differences were made clear in the packaging and marketing, you'd probably pick the ethical printer paper even if it did cost $2.89 more than the cheaper, less ethical one. And you know what? You'd probably be fine. Yes, of course, it will all add up, but if I waved a magic wand and suddenly all the cheaper, unethical equivalents of the stuff you buy vanished and magically didn't cause a huge economic collapse from the sheer suddenness of my spell's effect, then I bet the vast majority of you would still be able to live and enjoy your lives without any real hiccups. And those of you who genuinely couldn't are the people who would benefit the most from me waving that magic wand in the long run. Your pay would go up and working standards would go up, etc. So, if you can afford it, and again, you probably can, please pay the extra few bucks to buy the more ethical version of whatever you intend to purchase. Start with one product or service and do it with another and another until finally you have to change your lifestyle, if you even do. At that point, you'll have to decide for yourself how much your lifestyle is worth. But even if you go no further, you'll still be doing a lot more good with your dollars. I'm already living in a cardboard box, so I guess I'm already doing my part for ethical consumption. Story 2. The US medical culture. You fight tooth and nail during undergrad to get into med school, top GPA in a science based major, minor, volunteer work, patient care hours, research hours, and don't forget the almighty MCAT. You're in medical school. Hooray! Hard part's over, right? Nope. Now you're competing for residency spots. This determines what field you're going to work for in the rest of your life. Better get top grades and do very well on your STEP exams if you want to get into a competitive field. Don't forget to do more community service, join several clubs, be involved in extracurriculars, and keep your grades top notch. So you're graduating medical school. Finally, here comes that dream job and the money, right? Lol. Nope. Did you go to medical school because you wanted to be a surgeon? Oh, well, did you do poorly on your STEP exams and your grades are only low? Sorry, you only matched into a family medicine residency, but that's not what you went to medical school for? Tough crap, join up or don't be a doctor. So, you start residency, at least I'm getting paid now, right? Lol, yeah, minimum wage. Also, you work 80 to 100 hours a week. Also, your $200,000 in debt that you have, the bank's called, you're out of school and need to start paying those back. Residency is great though. You're finally working as a doctor, getting called doctor, taking care of patients. Finally, some respect is well deserved. Nope. You're bottom of the totem pole, runt. The attendings crap on you. You're yelled at constantly for knowing nothing and do all the crappy jobs. Give it a few years, maybe you'll have some respect as a senior resident, but still only make $50K a year. So, you've finished 3 to 7 years of residency, depending on specialty. You're finally a full-fledged doctor, right? Maybe. If you want to go into critical care or subspecialize, you'll need to do a fellowship. That's another year or two of residency, basically. How are those loans holding up? So you're finally an attending doctor. You went through the process and know how grueling and awful it was. You may even know some classmates who ended it all before they finished the whole thing. What do you do now? You do the same thing to the new fresh residents that your attendings did to you, screw the hell out of them, make them feel awful, ruin their lives for the next foreseeable years. Everyone in the medical community knows this is a problem. Every med student and resident complains about it. We have a shortage of doctors and no one wants to change the culture. It's crazy. Disclaimer, no, I never tried to get into medical school and I'm not bitter. I worked in several hospital systems over several years, witnessed this firsthand, and decided to go to PA school instead, save myself from the torment mentioned above. Story 3. The common view that ending it all is a selfish act, that's just plain ignorant. It's not an easy process, it is a result of weeks or even years of mounting pain. Nobody wants to pass away, but sometimes the pain is just too much and people don't perform well under that kind of pressure. It doesn't just make life harder, it can really screw with your head. People often forget that depression isn't just an emotional state, it is a mental illness. It messes up your brain in all sorts of ways. Depression convinces you that your mother, who hugs you every day and bakes you cakes on your birthday, would be happier if you were gone. Depression convinces you that you're awful at drawing, even though your friends all love your artwork. Depression convinces you that you're stupid and worthless and unimportant. Depressed people often really, truly fall for the crap that depression whispers in their ear, and they start to believe it. It is a very common occurrence for these people to have a brief period of generosity where they give away all their worldly possessions to friends and family right before they end it all because they want their loved ones to be as happy as possible when they're gone. These people do not see how messed up that is. They don't see how wrong it is that they view their own lives as lower than the value of their car or their jacket or their favorite guitar. Like I said, depression messes you up. And like I said, it is a mental illness. Calling it, quote, selfish is incredibly harmful not only for the depressed people involved because it shames them into silence, but also for the people who care about them. Teaching people that it is selfish silences all discussion into the nature of depression. It implies that people who attempt to do it care more about themselves than others, which is almost always not the case. It implies that it is the easy way out. It implies some flaw of character. What it doesn't talk about is how devastated a person's mind has to be in order for them to choose that instead of life. It doesn't talk about how much pain a person goes through before they choose that. What it doesn't do is encourage people to talk about the facts. These people need to be able to talk about their problems in order to get better. The people around them need to be able to understand depression in order to be more supportive and to overcome grief in a healthier way in the event of that. Spreading the selfish stigma helps nobody. Story 4. Telling people who are extremely happy over a new purchase why it's crappy or why they shouldn't have done it. I had a buddy who went from an old beat-up pickup to a brand new Mazda 3. It looks amazing, is a manual, etc. One of our old friends pestered the living hell out of him, telling him that it was a girl's car and that he should have just fixed up his old beater because it was more, quote, manly. Well, this other guy is literally driving a car that is completely falling apart. My buddy looked so discouraged and sad. I did the best I could to tell him how awesome his car is and how much better the technology is in it compared to my older Saab. This guy worked a ton of overtime, saving as much as possible while working a barely higher than minimum wage job to get a decent down payment so he would have a nice monthly payment just to have his greatest accomplishment crapped all over. It's sickening. Story 5. Hot mess parents who don't have their crap together. Now, before I am raked across the coals, let me explain. I'm speaking about how the positive effort to not mom shame and the reality that moms are not perfect has swung too far. It is now becoming acceptable to excuse awful mothers/parenting because people keep claiming we cannot mom shame. When a parent is neglectful, puts too much time and effort into anything but their kids, irresponsible, and doesn't provide a decent environment for their kids, that isn't a good thing. And shouldn't be given a free pass with a witty saying of, don't mom shame. I see moms bragging that they haven't done laundry in weeks, forget to pack their kids' lunch again, and their kids have eaten fast food every night because, hey, mom life is rough, tee-hee, let's have some mommy juice/wine. If anyone says anything about maybe you should start a load of laundry or just try to cook a simple meal, people attack them as shamers. It's just swung too far. Lazy, awful parents are benefiting from it, and it is toxic and unfair to the kids. And yes, I know dads exist too. However, I am speaking about personal experience as a mother and the mom culture. Story 6. There's this guy at work who is always throwing marbles on the ground for us to slip on, and sure, the first few cartoon-style wipeouts are pretty funny. But then I slipped on the marbles one day, and a marble perfectly right at the start of my back, and I swear I felt the indent of that marble for a few months afterwards. Of course, we all started throwing marbles on the ground after a while, and soon we could barely walk anywhere without carefully picking and choosing each step lest we lose our balance. I hate it. I hate working here. Every day it's just more and more marbles, and I'm pretty sure some people are toasting walnuts in the mix too, and those puppies got an edge on them. Do you know what it's like to try and go up and down the stairs? Screw this place. And everyone is laughing all the time too, like it's a frickin' clown factory. You think people beefing on a bunch of marble would get old after a few months, but nope. Here we are, 2 years later, and I'm still shuffling through marbles like an old man with a busted hip trying to slowly walk down his driveway on an extra icy day to go see his great granddaughter for the first time, and I hate it. I just want it to be over. Story 7. Single motherhood. Modern society seems to celebrate it as heroic and brave, but it actually puts the kid at serious risk of joining the ranks amongst bad statistics. Before I continue, let me state that this is about crapping on the pieces of crap men who knock a girl up and ditch her with the kid. In no way am I trying to badmouth women who didn't have a decision in the matter of being left alone with a child. But anyways, study after study after study has shown that children need two parents and a father figure, more so for young boys and girls. There's a pretty heavy correlation between the likelihood of a child growing to be involved in crime and poverty for children who grow up without a father. And again, let me reiterate, this is me calling out the schmucks who impregnate a girl and run off, not the poor women who are stuck alone with a child. My heart goes out to them and I wish them all the luck I can raising their child. Story 8. Sports culture. It is aggressive and permeates way too deeply into people's lives. A guy has stickers of a football team all over his car, logo on half his clothes, a place in his house where he collects memorabilia, can't miss a game, and flies into a severe outrage if the game doesn't go his team's way. Plaster your children with it, your home with it, watch TV shows, and listen to radio that do nothing but talk about it, throw parties to watch it, read websites about it, have your phone update you about it, etc., etc., etc. I know guys who physically leave the house when their team is losing because of how angry they get and don't want to yell at their families. More than one. I know another family where the dad and all the sons got a team's logo shaved into their heads. And who hasn't seen those dudes who book entire vacations to travel and paint themselves in team colors and scream like maniacs? They even start talking like they are on the team and say crap like, "We won." Any other hobby you worship to this degree and you would be considered mentally ill. Story 9. Tipping culture. I am all about decent wages, but I find it ridiculous that I have to tip someone while they're just doing their job. It's a bit stupid to think that the more you pay for your food, the more you have to tip, or having to tip anyone who does some sort of quote unquote service work. When I don't tip, I'll get shamed for it and I'll get hostile treatment from people around me. Once, I got really terrible service from this restaurant and I told my friend I was not going to tip them, and immediately he started shaming me, telling me how much people in the food industry made and that he was once in that industry. In the end, I tipped the waitress, but I only tipped 10% instead of 15%, the usual. I felt stupid knowing I am still tipping them even though they don't deserve it. I'd rather have prices of food/services be more expensive than having a tip. Yeah, the tipping system can be a bit confusing. Is it 15%, 20, 25? If they smile at me, I just throw a handful of change in the jar and hope for the best. Story 10. Cultural elitism and gatekeeping. I know some vegans that think if you aren't 100% vegan, you might as well deserve to go out. I know people that completely dismiss the opinions of others purely based on the type of music they listen to. People get so attached to cultural, quote, norms that it creates this often violent fanaticism over things that really aren't that important. Then even worse are the people that have a savior complex. They want to tell people how to live or improve their lives without knowing the circumstances of said people. But it's merely their own narcissism in play. You don't give a crap about my health when you say you don't like smokers/drinkers, etc. You just prefer a world without them because in your mind that is the ideal world. It's purely a selfish belief, and there's nothing more selfish than damning other people's free will to appease your own ego. Let people make the wrong decision. Your personal definition of right or wrong is speculation at best. Cheating, it's become so normalized that it's downright sad. Either bite the bullet and become poly or leave your current SO. Story 11. I think the way people lightly mention or make fun of a person's height. I talk about height because it is something people usually tend to focus on when they meet me. But this can be extended to any body feature that can't be changed, like a crooked nose or pointy ears. Surgery can be an option in some cases, but it is expensive and can make things worse. What really bothers me is how mentioning these things to someone doesn't necessarily make you a schmuck. I mean, you have eyes, you should have noticed by now that you are short, so why not constantly remind you? In comparison, I feel that instead calling someone fat makes you a schmuck, and I totally agree with it. Nobody should have the right to judge someone, but I don't get why people making fun of something that can't be changed because genetics and stuff. But mentioning someone's weight, you can usually lose weight. Obviously, if there's no medical condition that makes it impossible for you, triggers a huge storm. Sorry for the long rant. Story 12. Paying and charging for quote unquote what the market will bear with no regard for social consequences. I'm not suggesting people shouldn't make a profit, but the way the American system currently works in regards to employees is grotesquely unfair. The people who do all the work get paid as little as possible, while the people with wealth collect an inordinate amount of money from their labor. We all pay more because of this sort of thinking. We need more taxes and systems to support the people who are paid poorly. We need to create low income housing. There's also a social cost in terms of mental health problems and crime. There should be a sense of a social contract and not looking only at how you can squeeze every dime out of people and damn the consequences. There is all sorts of corporate welfare, and one way we supplement their wealth is by tolerating systems which allow them to create an underclass that exacts a huge social and financial toll on everyone else. Story 13. People telling kids, "Oh, what a good boy/girl you are," or "she or he was being such a good girl or boy when we went out." That kind of language just makes it harder to help my kid work through the tendency they already have to make things black and white. I have no problem with giving a compliment, but it would be less harmful to compliment them on the thing they did well. For example, she or he was listening really well today when we went out and didn't run off even when she or he wanted to. Just saying they're good or bad makes it sound like their whole being is either good or bad. That type of black and white labeling has already contributed to self-esteem issues, and mine is only 6. Heck, I think that type of talk helps solidify my own issues with setting impossibly high standards for myself from an early age. Now, when I don't meet those ridiculous standards that would make me, quote, good, I feel like crap because that must mean I'm, quote, bad. Ignoring the gray area has probably contributed to how polarized the country is now, too, just saying. So save your kids a bunch in therapy fees and just tell them what it was that they did well and why. Say what you mean what you say. Story 14. Coming from the military, I have a special kind of hate for group punishment. In the military, at least, it somewhat makes sense for job-related tasks because everyone depends on everyone else doing their job correctly or people might be gone. But then we would get all punished because Joe decided to get a DUI on the weekend. Someone didn't sign back into the barracks before our curfew, so let's have a formation at 2 a.m. and go walk across the entire base looking for said person. So now we all have to sit through safety briefings every Friday before the weekend, and they tell us not to drink and drive, don't get into a bar fight, etc. As if anyone doesn't already know those things are wrong or illegal, and it never fails, people still do those things. Story 15. I'm 18, I live in a pretty decent area, but a lot of my friends' parents are ex-smokers or ex-drinkers. My dad is an ex-smoker too. He finally quit about 8 years ago because he didn't want to pass away or not to be able to play with his grandkids. My friends don't think it's a big deal because, quote, smoking isn't as bad as drinking. Like, honestly, I think it's the whole vaping craze, but smoking is bad for you. Just because it's not as bad as drinking doesn't mean it isn't bad. I also dislike how normal it is to drink. People stigmatize smoking to the point of no return. But even though drinking is supposedly worse than smoking, pretty much everyone drinks the moment they turn 21 in the US. Most people have tried it before the legal age. I don't get it. If drinking is so bad for you, why do people drink so much? I personally can't drink because of health stuff, so the worst thing I'd ever have is like a German beer or wine, which is super distilled. Anyways, there are so many ads warning us about lung cancer and all these other issues. Where are the anti-alcohol ads? Story 16. I think the old, what doesn't end you only makes you stronger chestnut really needs to go out. It's commonly said and meant to be encouraging, but it really doesn't serve anybody, and it's not true in the way many people think it is. There's this whole idea wrapped around our Judeo-Christian culture that suffering has a kind of purifying quality, that it makes us better people just by its sheer existence. People get compared to inanimate stone or metal. God or suffering itself is seen as this grand sculptor just sort of chipping away and making us better, tougher, more saintly, and righteous. But that's not the reality in most instances. People who have really suffered and become better in spite of what has happened to them, not because of it. And it takes a lot of work. Far more commonly, there are people all around us who are negative products of their suffering. Sometimes it's kids who grow up to say that their father them made them tougher, but in reality, they're not tough. They've just learned how to mash all their original feelings into one they find acceptable, rage, and the cycle repeats itself. Other times, people just flat out lose their mind, psychosis, schizophrenia genes made active by stress, PTSD, substance misuse. Survival instincts can bring out the worst in anybody, and what doesn't end us originally can make us want to end ourselves. The reason statements like, what doesn't end you only makes you stronger, aren't encouraging is because they glorify suffering and the world in which it still exists. You can be a proud survivor and value your own strength, but our end game shouldn't be to survive terrible things. It should be to evaluate the big picture and prevent those terrible things from happening to anyone else ever again. A world full of people who are strong because they have no other choice is a world in which people have sacrificed their humanity for survival and an imaginary idea. And if you're learning a thing or two from this video, please don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 17. This is going to jump around to many different points, and I kind of don't want to be that guy, but obesity being glorified in the mainstream media. I'm not talking obesity due to sickness, medication, and the low chance of really poor genetics. I also know that for many people, they work long days, have families to care for, and the daily struggles of providing, which leads people to unhealthy eating habits and a lack of exercise. My biggest issue after watching and reading up a fair bit of it in the public eye is how many obese people are given a voice and platform to encourage and glorify being overweight. Now, to throw this out there, I agree with the sentiment that nobody should be body shamed or pestered based on their appearance, but I also feel people are too sensitive and unaccepting of criticism of their unhealthy life choices. There's many factors that lead to obesity, the majority stemming from mental health issues, whether it's depression, eating to cope with trauma, etc., etc. How people treat this as acceptable in comparison to someone who is anorexic and not eating is two worlds apart. For years, models and skinny girls were in magazines and on TV glorifying the overtly skinny look, and after many years, it seems to have subsided a bit with a healthier look being portrayed after years of criticism and lobbying. But now, on the other side of the scale, literally and figuratively, we have obese modeling and fat acceptance all over the media, which to me seems like a huge contradiction and hypocritical move with so many negative facts pointing at that lifestyle as its cause. In a lot of American politics, the left and third wave feminists seem to be the main perpetrator of this and use it as a tool to lobby for the disenfranchised or that target market per se. Aside from politics, because that's only a fraction of the issue, the long-term side effects and ramifications are tremendous, severely damaging many vital organs and a leading cause of sickness and disease. Statistically speaking, it is one of the biggest health crises humankind is facing. I constantly find myself trying to wrap my head around how it has become so common and glorified in the media and society. I feel that the media exposes the issue but presents it in the wrong light, letting outrage and headhunting becoming the norm to anyone who dares comment on someone's appearance or lifestyle choices. It becomes increasingly difficult to try and assist somebody to live a happier, longer, and healthier life because nobody wants to sit down and have a serious conversation about it. A big argument I use a lot of the time is to consider this. You have a child, if you had no option of intervention, but to choose between them smoking/drinking or letting them overeat and become abundantly overweight, I'd let them smoke or drink purely based on the negative impact obesity has on their health over tobacco and alcohol. Not saying an alcohol or tobacco is healthy, but it sure as hell doesn't equate to the damage obesity can do. Over a long term, it can be debated most definitely, but I personally feel it is the lesser of both evils. Another argument I use is the running cost of healthcare to treat obese patients is grossly higher than a healthier, weighted person. I remember reading that in like 2008, it cost the US healthcare system $140 billion. The rate of obesity has grown significantly higher since, with an increase in the cost of healthcare too. So you can imagine what it's costing now, all because less and less people care about their weight and appearance and livelihood. I don't know if it's that big of a deal to everybody else, but I feel this is a lot bigger of a problem than is recognized. Story 18. Any form of diet fad, I can't stress to people enough that some random diet on the internet or that's being promoted solely for the purpose of making money is not going to fit your specific body's needs. Most diets fail at this, and even the standardized food pyramid fails at this. Go talk to a freaking nutritionist, someone who is a medical professional when it comes to diet. These people can practically figure the composition of your body down to the last atom if they need or want to. I guarantee you, a nutritionist or even just a general doctor visit is going to do much more wonders for anyone than a freaking keto diet. Just a side note, if your body was not designed or meant to eat or digest a certain thing, it would tell you. Your body has safety features in place to prevent consumption of anything deemed toxic or unwanted. Although it's not perfect, I trust my own body's defense mechanism and exit response to tell me if what I'm eating is helping it versus some random person on the internet that thinks eating mostly nothing but fat is healthier than a balanced diet. Story 19. I'm not disparaging anyone's religious beliefs, but the huge emphasis placed on girls, especially to save themselves for marriage, can become toxic. From purity rings to chastity, it sends the message that a girl's value is connected to her purity. While I think teaching kids that loving relationships, including in the form of marriage, are the healthiest and happiest relationships, I don't think it's right to place so much emphasis on intimacy as a measure of morality or so much emphasis on intimacy, period. It's weird for parents or others to so publicly interject themselves into their children's exploration. All you can really do is set boundaries, teach them consequences, how to protect themselves, and what respectful relationships look like. Hopefully, they'll make good choices with what you teach them. I was raised in a very conservative household and had a weird relationship with intimacy for years as a result. Now, as an adult, I understand that it is natural, and whether I've had one partner or 100, it's really no one's business and has nothing to do with my value as a person. Story 20. The idea that women are expected to want kids and those who don't are odd. My brother and sister in law are in their mid 30s. They've been together since they were 16, and neither of them has ever wanted kids. No one batted an eye when my brother said he didn't want them, but my sister in law gets the "you'll change your mind" or "are you sure" all the dang time. My brother says work colleagues will say things like, "You're not out of the clear yet, she'll probably change her mind." She's 34 and hasn't changed her mind yet. She works for a major international company as one of the youngest ever directors of business development at a $200,000 a year salary and doesn't want to give up her career because she loves to have kids. It would be really hard to keep her crazy demanding job and give sufficient attention to a child even if she did want one. But no one will believe her that she doesn't want a kid. She says she can't wait until she hits her 40s so people stop bothering her about it. I jokingly said at that age she'll get the "you still have time and you can still adopt" comments, and she looked horrified. Story 21. I hate how, as a white male, people are constantly assuming my values and lumping me in with those people whose ideals could not be further from mine by people who love to ride on their high horse. That crap needs to stop. If you're going to call the people who hold those values out, I'll do that right alongside you, but single those people out specifically? Schmucks. Stop saying things like, "some people, mostly white men, are saying this extremist, unethical thing." The point comes across just as well without singling out white men as being the most common demographic for those people. I just watched a video by a pop culture detective that did exactly this. That channel is not the only one that does it, and it angers me off every time. The only identity you should be pointing out is a group of people who identify with prejudice values. Stop lumping my entire race and gender in with those people and assuming my values. It's extremely toxic and mildly prejudiced, and I guarantee that it only serves to create more people like them because they will view it as an attack on their identity, and rightly so. If it's wrong to say people in gangs are mostly people of color, then it's also wrong to say mostly white men are prejudiced. Just say they are wrong without linking them to identities. The whole point of calling out the latter two in the first place is to further a society where identity doesn't matter anyway, but I am at times astonished by the people who need to be reminded of that. Story 22. Anyone being super jealous, possessive, controlling, etc.? It's not love if you feel the need to constantly go through their phone or know exactly where they've been. It's not love if he or she tells you that you can't hang out with specific friends. I used to be really bad about it myself, but I've since grown out of it, and honestly, looking back, I cringe at some of my old behavior. I wanted to add parents invading your privacy, especially as a teenager, and then expecting you to trust them. You should never go through your kids' diaries, sketchbooks, texts, etc., work out their information. They're becoming their own person with their own thoughts and interests, and as a loving parent, you need to respect them when they start to develop boundaries. They'll show you what they're proud of, they'll come to you when they need help. All you need to do is be a decent human being and leave their crap alone. Give them some space. It's so much more effective than being all up in their crap. Source: Mom was invasive and I didn't tell her all about my personal life. Dad gave me space. I tell him everything and often would wait a week to unload all my crap onto him because I just didn't want to talk to my mom about it that badly. I'd show him my sketchbooks, including some of my anatomy studies, because of how proud I was, even if it was weird charcoal sketches of people. Story 23. Being able to get out of real consequences or give yourself a ridiculous advantage by no skill or merit of your own, but with money. Endanger literally everyone around you with reckless driving? Money makes it go away. Literally end someone because you were negligent? Money makes it go away. Want to play in the NFL? Money sends you to football specializing private academies, gets you to a high profile high school where you can be noticed by recruiters, bribes recruiters if you're not good, puts you through college and buys grades if you're not smart enough, and puts you right into the team of your choice where you just get more. Want to be famous? Buy fake and real followers on the social media platforms of your choice, or just be famous because you have money. Want to be president? You get the picture. Maybe that's why Lady Justice wears a blindfold so she can't see who's screwing her. Story 24. Having a computer that is never more than 2 feet from your body, that has a built in camera and microphone, and is always turned on and connected to the internet, and is programmed to figure out what you like and believe and never show anything that you don't like or believe. If you close yourself up in a physical bubble and only breathe your own exhaust, you will poison yourself. When you close yourself in a mental bubble, you poison your brain with your own confirmation bias and you forget how to think objectively. When everyone does it, governments stop functioning effectively, the alliances that have been keeping peace for 50 years start falling apart. No one can figure out what to do about climate change, or governments meddle in each other's elections, and Western civilization crumbles into dust. Story 25. I retired from teaching public school after only a couple of years because it was common practice in my school and district to pass academically challenging students so that the kids wouldn't continue to bring down the school's test scores. It was especially important for my principal and vice principal because our standardized test scores were low enough for long enough that the school was placed on a sort of probationary status. At the end of each year, teachers would look through the permanent records of their homeroom students to ensure everything was as it should have been before being passed off to the next grade. When wrapping up my first year, no student in my homeroom got less than a 65, which was a D- in the district in any class. I dismissed it as a coincidence, even though other teachers were an open book about how badly some of these kids were failing their courses. When my second year came around, I got to see this stuff firsthand. Specifically, I had a problematic student who refused to complete both his midterm and final exams, the combined total of which accounted for a whopping 30% of each student's final grade in each class, and opted for a big fat 0 instead. As was expected, the rest of his classwork was abysmal, and the kid was on track to failing my class, which would have resulted in him repeating the 8th grade. Instead, my vice principal strong-armed me into finding a way to still let him pass my class. As a naive 22-year-old who was worried about losing his job, I caved and passed the kid. At the end of year 2, I was again putting together the permanent records for my homeroom kids, and there it was, straight 65s for a swath of students who likely didn't deserve them. I asked a neighboring instructor who had been teaching in the district for over a decade if this was business as usual. He nodded without a word. I didn't come back for a third year. Maybe they should have just given everyone a participation trophy and called it a day. Story 26. Teachers who grade, quote, in their head instead of using a rubric or any sort of pre-discussed standard. I work with one. I teach music. I make a rubric for assessing my students. My students and I work together to create it, evolve it, weigh it, update it periodically as needed, etc. The students can ballpark their scores. I try to be black and white, no gray area. Beyond that, assessment is deferring to my expertise as a musician. It's not a subjective thing. You either get the ink or you don't. In any case, all assessments are somehow recorded and archived. My grades might mathematically work out to 86.75928, but that's because the kids gave, quote, materials a weight of 4.75, and the whole rubric averages with another rubric most kids get a 100 on. But it's honest and as close to fair as I think I can get. My colleague thinks back to that lesson he taught 3 days ago and says, they probably get like a 90. They're always good. It's not easy to fail band with me, but if you do, it was recorded in the rubric Y. I've only ever had one kid lodge a complaint that I was not being fair and band was the only class he wasn't getting an A in, blocking his admission to a private school. So I, the admins, and the parent designed a test-out assignment for him to prepare for a week. I gave each person a rubric. The next week, he came and crapped all over the assignment because he didn't practice. His own mother gave him a 12. I gave him a 36.8. My admin showed him the door. Story 27. Late and marginal, but about gaming, spawn, termination, and FPSs. In a tournament environment and/or high leagues is usually accepted and expected. Both parties are well-trained, both know every inch of the map and weapon item placements. That's fair enough, they both agree, and they usually know both where they will spawn and where they will be spawn camped from. On a more humbly home basis, heck no. The main goal of a video game is 99% to have fun, unload stress, and have a tiny bit of social life. Playing with friends and playing alone are two very different things. When you spawn camp, you show that yes, you're proficient in positioning and you know the map very well. But on the other side of your virtual barrel, there's a person. No one is pleased by being terminated in the same instant they spawn again and again and again. They have no chance to win, they're just playing as your personal practice dummy. Spawn camping is forgetting that on the other side, there's a real person, not just a chunk of bytes. Some games grant you some immortality frames, but most of them don't. Also, one side has a split second to first understand where he is, another to see where the menace is, and another to react and move. The spawn camper has just to wait for the enemy to pop up in his sight and double tap you. How skilled. I get that sometimes stuff happens. Sometimes the spawn algorithm just messes it up, and that's fine. I've been on both ends of the rifle when that happened. I also get that some games let you choose the spawn point. That's where it gets a little muddy because on one side you just spawned, on the other side it wouldn't be very wise to respawn there again. Still, the first time you can't know. But for the love of all that is mighty, please don't methodically place your damn scope on the spawn. I'd like to play, just like you. I don't like to play a deploy button simulator. And for those who will say, but if the devs wanted to delete spawn camping, they'll do something about it. No, they gave you the choice to express yourself. And if you're spawn camping on purpose, you, not them, made the choice to be a schmuck. Reality is that you don't give a crap about who you're playing with. They're just there to fill the server and give you something to shoot at, and that's a bit sad. Stop spawn camping, start playing, it'll be more fun. Story 28. A couple from the education world. Normal practice of comparing students based on, quote, indicators, race, gender, socioeconomic status, and then dedicating funds. If you ever saw the movie PCU, it does a great depiction of the institutional grouping / PC crap. Example, happening all over the US based on the available research, black males are disproportionately suspended when compared to everyone else. So money is dedicated to staff training about culture and sensitivity training. Administrators are reluctant to suspend due to the ACLU lawsuits based on this data marker. What is being ignored is the actual issue of why these kids are getting in fights, stealing from their colleagues, being defiant to the point of suspension, etc. Teacher sympathy / empathy doesn't stop the kid from decking another kid. Teaching profession. Only consider professional when there aren't any materials available or when a solution to a problem they are facing doesn't exist, so are fed the line, "You're all professionals / the experts here, I'm sure you can figure it out." Expectation of working beyond contractual hours to the detriment of their personal / family life. Monthly told everything they have been doing is wrong because of X trendy teaching style / documentary / research. Rarely, if ever, meaningfully praised for normal work. Only time you hear praise for a teacher is when they're going above and beyond. See second point. Public figure without any of the perks, while other careers require someone to watch social media posts and general behavior outside of the work environment. Teachers aren't really allowed to not act like a teacher after hours, unless they live in a different town, city, or neighborhood. Example, teacher buying wine at a grocery store. Parent of one of her students tells her she is setting a bad example for the students. This ends with the teacher politely putting back the bottle and then grabbing a magnum and walking away. Career seen as a fallback / easy / anyone can do it, etc. Teachers, the experts on what the heck is going on in the classroom, are rarely ever asked or talked to about or interviewed when policies are being made that impacts what happens in the classroom. Story 29. Drinking soda with every meal. If you look at the history of soft drinks, you'll find that they went from something people categorized as candy to something we were convinced was good to chug down with every meal. There was a time when people, quote, went out for a soda, like it was a special occasion or gave a few sodas as holiday gifts. Drinking a cola occupied the same sort of cultural place as having an ice cream cone or a milkshake. Then, Coca-Cola and its competitors realized it could make more money by advertising their drinkable candy as something to drink several times a day every day, and they successfully normalized that idea to where a huge portion of the entire world thinks nothing of it. I mean, I've known loads of people who drink soda almost exclusively, myself included, though in recent years I've been cutting back a lot. And if you learned a thing or two from these stories, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.